Liam Roberts admired the view of the neon windows of his store for a bit, and then, leaving the car in the parking lot, headed towards the entrance. The man rightly considered the store to be his brainchild and remembered well the times when its profits were 3 times lower than they were now. Liam has been working as the store manager for several years and was used to personally supervising the process. There were few customers at this time of day, so the attention of the young man was immediately attracted by a little girl of about 8 years old, who stood in the lobby begging for alms. If the guard hadn't approached the little girl at that very moment, Liam would have probably just passed her by without giving it too much thought. But Jacob Green had recently started working as a security guard at the store and decided to use this opportunity to show off in front of his superiors. Thus, the man approached the little beggar and told her to leave. Of course, he did it deliberately and with only one purpose: to impress the store manager. To the guard's surprise, Liam strongly disliked his demonstration of power, which was supposed to give the manager an impression that the guard was ready for anything. The manager knew for a fact that when there weren't many customers at the store, Jacob was usually sleeping at his post and ignoring office instructions. "Wait, Jacob, hold on a minute. How did this girl bother you?" Liam asked as softly as possible. The guard frowned. Then he thought for a second or two and said, "She's a beggar. She will scare off all the customers with their looks. I know these people. They steal wallets and they steal food. I already told her to leave twice today and she keeps coming back." Liam looked at the girl carefully and saw the fear in her eyes. "It seems to me that you're overreacting a little, Jacob. This little girl can't be a thief. I'm sure of it," the young manager said in an icy tone. "Well, you know better, of course, Mr. Roberts, but I wouldn't rush to conclusions. If you don't make them leave right away, these beggars will take over the entire place. You let one stay today, and tomorrow there will be more," the guard said, pursing his lips. But Liam wasn't listening to him anymore. He took the little girl by the hand and pulled her aside. "So, tell me, dear, what's your name and what happened to you? You don't usually do this, do you?" the manager asked and affectionately patted the little girl on the shoulder. The girl sighed quietly in response and began her story. As it turned out, the girl's name was Molly, and she begged for money for her mother, who was seriously ill. Since the girl didn't mention anything about her father, Liam assumed that she probably didn't have one. "That's tough. Come on, let me see how I can help you. Although, you know what? Come with me," said the young manager and led the girl deep into the store. There, Liam told the girl to pick whatever she needed. But the man didn't expect Molly to be so modest. The girl couldn't take any of the things she was offered. So, Liam decided to take matters into his own hands and quickly picked up a full bag of all kinds of necessary products for the girl, and some sweets too. Then, realizing that Molly couldn't carry the bag on her own, the young man offered to give her a ride home. "Actually, my mother doesn't allow me to talk to strangers, especially the ones that invite me to their car, but I can feel that you're a good person," Molly answered and smiled sweetly at her benefactor. "Yes, sweetheart, your mother is very right about that. Little girls like you should be very careful. I'll just give you a ride home to make sure you get there all right," Liam answered and opened the door of his Chevrolet for the girl to get in. As it turned out, Molly lived a couple of blocks from the store where Liam worked as a manager. On their way to her house, Liam suggested that the girl go to the pharmacy and buy medicine for her mother. To the surprise of the young manager, Molly remembered the names of all the meds her mother needed, which caused the man to feel very sorry for the little girl. The neighborhood in which the girl lived was considered one of the most disadvantaged in the city, which caused Liam to sympathize with the little girl once again. And when the manager brought the bags to the door, Molly invited him to come in. Liam didn't feel comfortable doing so at first, but then he decided not to decline the little girl's offer. It was also particularly due to the fact that the young manager couldn't shake off the feeling that this determined look the girl was giving him was somehow familiar. "Hi, Mom, I'm home. Mr. Rogers gave me a ride. Please don't be mad. He's really good and he bought us a lot of things," Molly announced straight from the doorway. "I'm glad, my dear. "But please promise me that you won't stay out so long anymore," the girl's mother answered from somewhere deep in the house. After hearing the woman's words, Liam let out an embarrassed cough and started getting ready to leave. He realized that he had involuntarily overheard a private conversation. He also thought it would be best for him to go because the manager hadn't seen the girl's mother yet and didn't want to make the sick woman feel uncomfortable having a stranger in her house. But to Liam's great surprise, the girl didn't want to let him go, and when they were at the door, she said, "Mr. Rogers, may I hug you goodbye? You've been like a fairy godfather to my family." After Molly's words, the young manager suddenly felt tears well up in his eyes. After fulfilling the girl's request, Liam politely said goodbye and left the girl his phone number. To be honest, the manager didn't really believe that Molly or her mother would call, but it made the man feel better about the whole situation. Having returned home, Liam couldn't fall asleep for a long time. He tossed and turned in his bed until almost midnight. Thoughts of Molly and her sick mother wouldn't leave the man's head. Liam couldn't understand why the girl's father left the family at such a crucial moment. The next several days flew by quickly. Molly hadn't called or come over to the store. Every time Liam came to work, the first thing he did was look at the guard post, hoping to see the little girl. But there was no one there, apart from the security guard, Jacob, who was desperately trying to make himself look important. Over time, thoughts of Molly and her mother faded into the background of Liam's life, and he finally calmed down a bit. And then, one fine morning, the young manager woke up to the sound of his phone ringing. He didn't know the caller's number, but he still picked up the phone. It was Molly, and she was very agitated. "Mr. Rogers, please save me. They want to take me to an orphanage," the girl said, crying. What? What are you talking about? Who wants to take you? Stay at home and don't go anywhere. I'll be there soon," Liam said and hurried to his car. 15 minutes later, the young manager was already standing at the door of little Molly's house. As it turned out, the neighbors had called social services, and now the social workers came to the girl's house to check on her situation. They concluded that the family's low income and the mother's sickness meant that Molly couldn't be properly taken care of at this house. Liam patiently listened to the girl's confused story, and then he quietly said, "What can I do to help? Maybe the social workers are right, and you'd really be better off in an orphanage." In response to this, Molly sighed sadly and looked reproachfully at the young manager. "Sure, I might be better off there. But Mr. Rogers, who will take care of my mother?" the girl asked with tears in her eyes. Liam definitely didn't expect this question. This whole situation made the man feel sick to his stomach. Then, pulling himself together, Liam asked Molly to let him talk to her mother, whom the man had heard so much about but had never seen. The woman was resting in the bedroom, wrapped in a blanket up to her neck. It was obvious that she was getting hot and cold flashes. But when Liam looked at the face of the girl's mother, he felt dizzy and weak to his knees. "Rachel, is that you?" the man asked in a trembling voice. Weak from fighting her disease, the woman barely managed to open her eyes. But when she saw Liam, she couldn't hold back the surprised exclamation. "Liam, what are you doing here?" the girl's mother whispered. The woman's face clearly showed that Liam was probably the last person she expected to see in her room. The truth was that Liam and Rachel studied together at the university and even dated for a little while. Unfortunately, they broke up about 8 years ago for a reason that Liam couldn't figure out to this day. But now, seeing her beloved, Rachel cheered up and told Liam that it was his father who made the young woman break up with him. Apparently, the man didn't think that she was a suitable match for his son. After all, Rachel Lopez was an orphan, while Liam was a very promising young man. Therefore, Henry Rogers made it clear to the unfortunate woman that her relationship with Liam was highly undesirable. Unfortunately, as she was breaking up with her beloved and dropping out of school at the same time, Rachel didn't know that she was already pregnant. The woman knew that Liam's father wouldn't care about it and would still find a way to split them up. Wanting to leave her past behind, Rachel moved and disappeared from Liam's life for 8 years. And now, when fate brought the former lovers back together, they couldn't help but feel the old feelings resurface. Rachel didn't know that Liam's father had lied to his son and told him that Rachel dropped out of the university to live in Kentucky with her fiancé. "Mom, why are you crying?" Molly interrupted the long pause. "Because Mr. Rogers is your father," Rachel answered, plucking up her courage. "That's so great! I'm so happy! My dad is amazing!" Molly screamed with joy. Liam wiped away a tear and took the girl in his arms. Then, the man approached Rachel and asked him how he could help. As it turned out, the doctors had diagnosed the single mother with a tumor. Fortunately, it was benign, but the woman still needed to get treatment. It was an expensive drug therapy, which Rachel couldn't afford. After the young mother dropped out of the university 8 years ago, all she could do was work as a cleaner or a waitress in a roadside cafe. What upset Liam the most was all this time, he had been living on the other side of the city and didn't even suspect that he had a daughter and that she desperately needed his help. "I promise to do everything in my power to help you, Rachel. I'm 100% certain that you'll get better," the young manager said in a decisive tone. Then, Liam kissed his little daughter and started calling all the private clinics in the city. After getting rejected by a couple of clinics, the man finally found a place willing to treat Rachel. Sure, it took the unfortunate woman some time to recover, but she did it. Liam spent all this time with his daughter, showing her the city, which she didn't really get a chance to see before. The man desperately tried to make up for everything that his daughter had been deprived of all these 8 years. And when Rachel was finally discharged from the hospital, Molly handed her an armful of balloons, and Liam added a bouquet of roses. "Mom, Mr. Rogers, Dad, he says that he wants to propose to you," Molly said, smiling happily. Rachel raised her eyebrows in surprise, but looking at Liam, she realized that her daughter was telling the truth. The man was holding open a velvet ring box with a beautiful golden ring inside. "Yes, my love," said Rachel, barely holding back her tears. Liam pulled the love of his life in for a tight hug and then swirled her in an impromptu dance, much to the delight of their daughter. The man knew that he had finally found the happiness he had been dreaming of all these 8 years.